Demigod bosses. These are the central rulers of the lands between, born from divine blood and shaped by the collapse of the Elden Ring. After the Shattering, each demigod claimed power for themselves, turning the world into a battlefield of broken kingdoms. Bosses like Elden Ring Godric the Grafted, Morgoth the Omen King, and Starscourge Radon belong here. What makes demigod bosses special is that they are not just enemies, but major story figures with their own ambitions, weaknesses, and histories. Defeating them changes the path of the game and gives you access to great runes, pieces of the world's lost order. Shardbearers are more of a specific type of demigod, defined by their possession of great runes. These runes are fragments of the Elden Ring itself, making their owners incredibly powerful, but often corrupted by that power as well. Examples include Godric, Renala, Radahn, Rykard, Morgoth, and Melania. Each one rules over a region shaped by their personality and their rune's influence. Fighting them feels like tearing apart the remains of a broken kingdom, and gathering their runes is one of the main reasons the Tarnished travels through the lands between. Legend bosses. Legend bosses are some of the most powerful and memorable enemies in the game, often tied to ancient myths or hidden truths. They're usually optional, but defeating them feels like uncovering a major piece of the world's forgotten history. Melania, Blade of Miquella, is one of the most famous examples, known for her unmatched swordsmanship and scarlet wrath. Dragon Lord Placidux is another ancient dragon lord from a time before the Earth Tree. These bosses matter because they reveal parts of the world far older than the main conflict happening. Field bosses. Field bosses are enemies you encounter naturally while exploring the open world. They are not hidden behind traditional boss arenas and can appear unexpectedly while riding across the map. The Tree Sentinel is the first example most players meet, standing outside the starting area as an early warning that not every fight should be taken immediately. Flying Dragon Akil and Tibia Mariner are also field bosses. Their purpose is to make exploration unpredictable and dangerous, turning ordinary travel into moments of tension. Dungeon bosses. At the end of caves, catacombs, tunnels, and smaller side dungeons, dungeon bosses wait as final challenges. These fights are usually shorter and more focused than major story bosses, but they still reward important items like spirit ashes, weapons, or talismans. Examples include Cemetery Shade, Earth Burial Watchdog, and Clean Rot Knight. These bosses help fill the world with smaller stories and challenges. Night bosses. Night bosses only appear after sunset, changing familiar places into something more dangerous. This mechanic makes time itself part of exploration, since some enemies simply do not exist during the day. Knight's cavalry is the most common example, black armored riders who patrol roads under darkness. Bell-bearing hunters also appear at night in certain locations. These bosses make revisiting old places feel meaningful because the world literally changes depending on when you return. Dragon bosses. Dragons are one of Elden Ring's most iconic boss types, carrying ancient power and often controlling fire, lightning, or magical breath attacks. Flying Dragon Akil is one of the earliest dragon fights, introducing players to wide area distraction and aerial attacks. Later dragons like Borealis, the Freezing Fog, and Lich Dragon Vorticex become far more complex. Then there is the Dragon Lord Placidusax, the ancient ruler of dragons. These bosses represent the world before human kingdoms, when dragons ruled the skies. Evergaol bosses. Evergauls are magical prisons scattered across the map, sealing away dangerous beings that were too powerful to leave free. Fighting inside one feels isolated, almost detached from the rest of the world. Bloodhound Knight Daredevil is one of the earliest examples, teaching fast and aggressive combat. Aiden, the Thief of Fire and ancient hero of Zamor are other examples. These bosses often feel like duels, focused on skill rather than spectacle. Invader bosses. Invader bosses fight like players, using weapons, dodges, magic, and aggressive timing. They are smaller in scale, but their unpredictability makes them dangerous. Bloody Finger Nereus is an early example, attacking players in Limgrave. Anastasia, Tarnished Eater, invades multiple times throughout the game, while Eleonora, Violet Bloody Finger, appears later as part of the quest line. These bosses feel personal because they fight like rivals instead of monsters. Beast bosses. Beast bosses are driven by instinct and aggression rather than strategy or magic. Their attacks are fast, wild, and often hard to predict. Room bears are some of the strongest beast enemies despite not always being major bosses. Red Wolf of Dradagon combines animal movement with sorcery, making it especially dangerous. Beastmen of Forum Azula is another example. These fights feel chaotic, forcing players to adapt quickly. Undead bosses. Undead bosses represent the broken relationship between life and death in Elden Ring's world. Their existence often ties into the game's deeper themes about immortality and corruption. Tibia Mariners summon the dead while moving through shallow waters, creating strange and unsettling fights. Deathrite birds are darker and far more dangerous, connected to ancient death rituals before the Earth tree controlled death itself. These bosses feel eerie because they remind players that death no longer works as it should. Giant bosses. These are bosses built around overwhelming size and strength, turning the battlefield itself into part of the challenge. The fire giant is the best example, covering huge distances with every movement and using devastating fire attacks. Falling Star Beast also fits here, using gravity magic with massive physical attacks. Giant bosses force players to focus on positioning and weak points rather than direct combat. Their scale creates a different kind of pressure. Magic bosses. Magic focused bosses control distance and battlefield pace through sorcery, summons, or magical projectiles. Renala, Queen of the Full Moon, is clearest example, combining defensive summons with powerful moon magic. Loretta also uses magical spears and ranged attacks while fighting on horseback. These bosses often feel more tactical because they punish careless movement and reward patience. They also reveal much about the magical systems and schools within the game. Night bosses. Night bosses are disciplined warriors relying on skill, armor, and weapon mastery instead of brute force. Crucible knights are among the most feared because they mix traditional swordplay with ancient draconic powers. Loretta and the Draconic Tree Sentinel also fit this category. These bosses feel fair but undemanding, often pushing players to truly learn timing, spacing, and defense rather than relying on panic or luck. God bosses. At the top of Elden Ring's power structure are beings tied directly to gods and other cosmic forces. Malekith, the Black Blade, guards destined death itself, carrying one of the most dangerous powers in the world. Radagon of the Golden Order represents the fractured divine power and order of the Earth Tree. Finally, the Elden Beast is the living symbol of the Greater Will's control over reality. These fights feel like less battles against creatures and more like confrontations with the laws that shape existence itself.